Ever wonder how the United States came to be? It's a story far older and more complex than you might think. It doesn't start with a flag, a constitution, or a single founding father. It begins thousands of years ago on a continent of breathtaking wilderness, long before the idea of America even existed. This land was home to countless Native American tribes, the Cherokee, the Sioux, the Navajo, and so many others. They were the first inhabitants, deeply connected to the earth. They were hunters, farmers, and spiritualists who built societies founded on community, balance, and respect for nature. The values Americans often celebrate today, bravery, independence, and strong communities, were first breathed into this continent by them. But in the late 1400s, the winds of change began to blow across the Atlantic. European explorers, driven by ambitions of gold, glory, and God, set sail for unknown horizons. In 1492, Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas. He did discover a new world. Millions of people were already living there, but his arrival triggered a monumental shift, a collision of worlds that would reshape the continent forever. Over the next few centuries, European powers, Spain, France, the Netherlands, and England raced to claim their piece of the New World. The English established colonies like Jamestown in Virginia and Puritan settlements in Mass. These early settlers were searching for opportunity, religious freedom, and a fresh start. But their arrival came at a devastating cost to the indigenous peoples, who faced new diseases, violent conflicts, and the erosion of their way of life. As the colonies grew, another shadow fell across the land: the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were captured, chained, and forced onto ships, enduring unimaginable horrors to be sold into bondage in the Americas. Their forced labor built the economic foundation of the colonies, cultivating the tobacco, cotton, and sugar that made others rich. This immense human tragedy is a dark, inseparable part of America's origin story. By the 1700s, the 13 British colonies had developed their own distinct identity. They were prosperous, diverse, and increasingly resentful of British control. London's policies, like imposing taxes without representation and restricting trade, felt like a tightening leash. The colonists' simmering frustration finally boiled over. In 1775, the first shots of the American Revolutionary War were fired. This wasn't just a war against a distant king. It was a fight for a radical new idea of self-governance, liberty, and human rights. A year later, in 1776, leaders like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams drafted the Declaration of Independence, boldly stating that all men are created equal. These words became the moral bedrock of the new nation, an ideal that America would spend centuries striving to live up to. After 8 long years of war, the colonies achieved their independence. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was written, a revolutionary document that created a blueprint for modern democracy, establishing a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The young United States was a nation brimming with ambition, fueled by the idea of manifest destiny, the belief that it was their divine mission to expand westward. Americans pushed across the continent. The Louisiana Purchase, in 1803, instantly doubled the country's size. Explorers Lewis and Clark journeyed all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and waves of settlers followed, moving into lands that had been home to native tribes for generations. This expansion was celebrated as progress, but for indigenous nations, it brought forced removal, broken treaties, and heartbreaking violence, epitomized by the tragic Trail of Tears. Meanwhile, a deep wound was tearing the country apart. Slavery. The industrial North and the agricultural South grew further and further divided over this fundamental issue of human freedom. By 1861, the tension exploded into the Civil War, the deadliest conflict in American history. Brother fought against brother, and the very soul of the nation was at stake. Under the leadership of President Abraham Lincoln, the Union fought not only to preserve the nation, but also to end the institution of slavery. In 1865, the North emerged victorious, and slavery was abolished. The subsequent Reconstruction era was an attempt to rebuild the South and integrate nearly 4 million newly freed African Americans into society. But deep-seated racism and violent resistance made progress agonizingly slow. The struggle for true racial equality was far from over. In the decades that followed, America underwent a massive transformation. It became an industrial juggernaut. Railroads stitched the country together, massive factories rose from the ground, and incredible inventions like the telegraph and the light bulb changed daily life forever. Millions of immigrants from Europe and Asia poured into the country, chasing the promise of the American dream. Cities like New York and Chicago exploded, their skylines reaching for the heavens. By the early 20th century, America was a global power. The nation's entry into World War I helped turn the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. The decade that followed, the Roaring Twenties, was a dizzying era of jazz, Hollywood films, and economic prosperity. But the party came to a crashing halt in 1929 with the Great Depression. The stock market collapsed, banks failed, and millions lost their jobs and homes. It was a time of immense hardship, but also of resilience. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal program slowly helped rebuild the economy and restore a sense of hope. Then came World War II. The shocking attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 propelled the U.S. into the global conflict. America's industrial might became the arsenal of democracy, and its soldiers fought and died on fronts across Europe and the Pacific. The war ended with the U.S. as the world's undisputed military and economic superpower. But victory in one war gave way to a new kind of conflict: the Cold War. For decades, the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a tense global standoff, a battle of ideologies between capitalism and communism. This rivalry played out in proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam, the nail-biting Cuban Missile Crisis, and the thrilling race to put a man on the moon. The Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 60s saw African Americans rise up to demand an end to segregation and discrimination. Led by courageous figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X, they used nonviolent protests, much, and legal challenges to awaken the conscience of the nation. Their struggle led to landmark legislation and fundamentally redefined the meaning of justice and equality in America. The late 20th century saw America's influence spread across the globe. The moon landing in 1969 was a symbol of its technological prowess. The rise of Silicon Valley, the personal computer, and the internet kicked off a new digital revolution. American pop culture, from Hollywood movies to McDonald's and Coca-Cola, became a global phenomenon. But challenges always remained. The 21st century began with a profound national trauma: the September 11th attacks in 2001. This event launched the war on terror and reshaped American foreign policy for years to come. In the decades since, the nation has grappled with economic inequality, intense political polarization, a global pandemic, and a rapidly changing world order. The story of America is a story of contradictions. It's a tale of breathtaking progress and profound injustices, of soaring ideals and painful failures. It's a history forged in conflict, built by immigrants, and constantly reinvented by each new generation. From the ancient footprints of its first peoples to the bustling energy of its modern cities, America is a nation defined by its journey. It is the story of a dream, the dream of a place where anyone, from anywhere, can build a better life. And though it is a story filled with flaws and unfinished business, it is a story that is still being written every single day by the millions of people who call this complex, dynamic, and ever-evolving nation home. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more.